Welcome to the Economic War Room. It's a pleasure to have two patriots who are dedicated to preserving the ideals of the American experience as well as promoting Christian values. So we're going to say welcome to Dr. Dave Brat. He's a former congressman and he's the Dean of Business at Liberty University. And Ryan Helfenbein, who is Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Liberty University and also the Executive Director of Liberty's Faith and Liberty Center. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
Last time we were together was in D.C. at the Trump International Hotel.
It's great.
That was a phenomenal experience, a two-day summit on China.
Yep.
Tell us, why did you want to bring together all those people to talk about China?
Yeah, well, my life, kind of like yours, is a synthesis between faith and economics, and that naturally leads you into politics. But the country, our country, that was built on three great pillars: the Juedo-Christian tradition, the rule of law, and then free market and business. And so I worked at the World Bank 30 years ago. China average income per capita was about $1,000 a year per person in China. So not a threat back then, right? Not an issue. Well, now they're our number one strategic threat, both economically. They've declared an information war against us back in 1999 in the famous document that folks should look up. And
Unrestricted Warfare.
Unrestricted Warfare. And then you got a few books by Bill Gertz and others who have, let us know what that document means and brought us up to speed. But now China is 0 for 3. Judeo-Christian tradition. They're repressive of religion and freedom of thought.
Right.
Second, on rule of law, there is none. It's completely repressive Huawei, and they're spying on all their people and getting them social credit scores. And third, business. We'll see what comes of that. I think they got a crack up coming, right? If you violate all three of those made us great. They're 0 for 3 on all of them. Yeah. So we wanted to pull together a China summit to expose this and to get at the issue. The biggest issue of our day is this coronavirus that's come over here.
No doubt.
Where was it made? How was it made? The evidence. Dr. Yan spoke at our China summit, along with Senator Cotton and Marshall Blackburn and Cruz and all of them, and 20 congressmen. And they all pretty much said the same thing. I mean, there's an active intent on the part of China at a minimum in terms of releasing airplanes, flying people here when they shut down their own economy.
Yeah,
so there's an intent there. And that's cost us 200,000 lives and shut down the economy for the first time in our history. It's never happened, just a by fiat government shutdown of the economy.
Greatest economic weapon unleashed in the history of mankind.
Right.
Yeah, when they wrote the book Unrestricted Warfare in 1999, I looked at the size of the Chinese economy. You mentioned it was 10% the size of ours.
Yep.
Now there's some estimates, you talk to the World Bank and others, and I think a lot of these estimates are phony, but some estimates that their economy is now larger than ours.
Right.
So in 20 years, how'd they build it? They built it, literally from stealing from us.
Right. Yeah, and when we fight, I mean, you've been doing this for 30 years. Thanks for leading the way. I'm following your lead and the show and weaponizing your money and all this kind of thing. And we're going to talk later about working together at Liberty. But that unrestricted warfare document we talked about in 1999, everybody should read that because it's a gut punch. When you read it, you notice that all the rules of civility are out the window. You're fighting with someone who is on the verge of evil.
Yeah.
When you read that, they announced attacking the trade centers in 1999. They announced biological warfare in that document in 1999. They went right through the laundry list of what's open game. They said, we can't fight you kinetically, right? Because of what you did in Iraq. You decapitated them, took the information away.
Although they're beginning to get to that point.
Right. And now they declared their intent way back when, and we're seeing it unleashed on the world right now. They're going through Africa. They're doing the Belt and Road initiatives. They're buying United Nations votes. And they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the asymmetry. We're not fighting Buddhists. We're not fighting folks who follow the Confucian ethic.
Right.
Right? Those ethics, right, have a lot of civility built into them. Respect for parents, respect for the law, respect for leadership, et cetera. And the American people, I think it's just another culture. No, it's not. The people share that culture, but the CCP has rejected it and crushed it.
Outright Marxist.
Right. And so
Maoist Marxist.
When I say we're fighting against China, I don't mean the Chinese people. I mean the CCP And they've made their intent and their actions very clear, and we're at war.
Yeah. Well, you brought together an incredible summit. And Ryan, you brought in some great people, Charlie Kirk and some people like that connected. You know, young people don't necessarily understand the threat China is because they didn't grow up during the Cold War. They don't know what a Cold War looks like. But you brought in some brilliant thinkers from that generation. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, part of what you're seeing is obviously economic warfare, information warfare, but you're also seeing the long march through our institutions. You think about family, when you think about education and what's happening here, and there are many people within the left, technocratic and the like, that envy what China and the CCP are able to do in terms of how they're the scourge of their
repressing
own
their people.
That's
and controlling.
exactly right. And they want to basically usher in a whole new normal and a cultural hegemony. So when we had Charlie in, one of the things we talked about was cultural Marxism on college campuses. And so for them, it's not necessarily an economic argument so much as it is a cultural one.
Right.
So they're trying to take that back, and they're doing it through organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all those young radicals, right? But it's for the older generation, they know of Alinsky, they know of Rules for Radicals, they know of all this stuff. For the younger generation, I think it's becoming apparent now how this conditioning is taking place.
Yeah.
So.
And they're waking up to it. You know, there's a story. A friend of mine who was in Beijing, he said, "What's the difference? I worked in New York, now I work in Beijing." He said, "I go to work, I do my job, I get paid, I go out for drinks and dinner with my friends. It's a cosmopolitan area, it's all the same, right? Until one day when he crosses a street in the middle of the street, like you do in New York or DC or any major city, you just cross, there's no traffic coming, crosses the street and his phone goes bing, and he looks at his phone and it's like, there's a picture of him jaywalking. And then there's a statement that you've broken the law and that you're going to pay a fine, and it's automatically deducted from your savings account. It's like, wait, what? This is not the same, and yet they want to bring that here. That's that you talked about it. The Belt and Road Initiative is going to bring that ability to control social credit scores, control the people.
Right.
So, but you put on a summit in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah.
That was tough. I mean, social distancing and all that.
Don't tell the people who believe the pandemic, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for doing it, because it was huge. And how many people do you think were watching it?
Well, estimated between America's Voice Network, Sinclair Broadcasting,
Economic War Room,
on
Blaze, yeah,
and the Blaze, all told a little over 2 million viewed us. Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, so we're going to come back. We got to take a break now. We filmed 3 shows during that. We'll release them to our viewers soon. We're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to dig deeper into the idea of Liberty University, the history of the school, and the future ahead. Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. David Brat and Ryan Helfenbein, and we're talking about Liberty University. And Liberty is our partner, as you know, in our advisor training program. But I want to dig into the school and the history, because it's had such an amazing role in American life and American culture. So, Ryan, tell us about a little history about Liberty University.
Yeah, well, I'm thankful to Kevin. And, when you think about big cultural icons and you think about great spiritual leaders in the 20th century, probably the first that comes to mind for evangelicals is Billy Graham. But I would say key among, say, the top three would be Billy Graham, Dr. Jerry Falwell Sr., and you might even say somebody like a Chuck Colson or a Francis Schaeffer. But he was so key and instrumental in the 1950s founding Thomas Road Baptist Church in a little bottling plant for orange pop, like soda pop in the 1950s. Started that missionally there in Lynchburg, Virginia, grew that church. In the late 60s, felt the call of God to start a Baptist Bible college there in Lynchburg. And so he started Lynchburg Baptist College. And then later that became Liberty University. In 1979, he founded the Moral Majority.
And I met him in 1979.
Did you?
My father knew him, and so he came to Oklahoma, and I got to meet Dr. Falwell with Cleon Skousen and Don Nichols, who was running for U.S. Senate. Just a marvelous, booming voice, powerful persona.
Absolutely.
Just a tremendous man.
The presence of Dr. Falwell was unparalleled. He'd walk in a room and immediately you'd spot a leader. And we're here in Dallas, right? And in 1988, he visited First Baptist Dallas and preached there with Dr. Criswell. But I just think about his leadership, both in the church as well as in the public and political sphere.
I don't think Ronald Reagan could have been elected without Dr. Jerry Falwell.
I would agree with you, and I totally agree. And you think about that particular pivotal election in 1980, and you had a Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher who was on the ballot, and he was running against a two marriages
Hollywood guy,
actor who was a pro-choice governor of California. Yeah. And you think about what that meant, but his backing of then candidate Reagan signaled a seismic shift, and he was correct, and largely evangelicals followed suit, recognizing what was best at the time for the nation.
Yeah, Phyllis Schlafly was there. I remember that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Phyllis and Dr. Falwell, and he made a difference.
He made a huge impact. And I think one of the marks is recognizing, and it wasn't new with him. I mean, you go back further in history, there were many other civic religious leaders who recognized that Christians need to have an active voice in the public sphere. We don't need to abdicate our calling as Christians to go out publicly to state our faith and to declare public morals. I think that's important as well. And the younger generation needs to be reminded of that. And I think what you're seeing right now, even in this current election, that there's a battle for the younger evangelicals to understand what the ethics are behind voting.
Right. Well, there's this big push, and you see the meme. And you've got an economics background. I've seen the meme with Jesus is on the Sermon on the Mount, right? And he's talking about taking care of the poor. Can't we just give all our money to the Romans and let them do it? I mean, that's the idea. But Liberty University doesn't teach that. You're not about cultural Marxism. You're not about teaching socialist theories in the business school. You're the dean. Tell us about what you are teaching.
No, we integrate the gospel into class every day. We train champions for Christ, and like on the socialist doctrine, I mean, it's fairly simple. You can share within the church and do as you want with your brothers and sisters that way. Voluntarily. But there's certainly no command that we get to command Rome or the federal government today. And since then, things have changed. You know, lately we're trying to teach the young folks about the sovereignty. Romans 13 comes up, and back, Romans 13 says submit to the rulers. They've been ordained by God to maintain peace, etc. Well, but now in 1776, we became the sovereign. The people are the new sovereign.
The ultimate ruler.
Right, so we're the sovereign. So that puts a special onus on us to play a part in this public square, right? It's not optional. You don't submit. It's not to Trump or Biden. It's to the law. We're people under the law. We're a nation under laws, not under men. And we haven't done a good job of educating the folks. And the good news is we have plans ahead that are just exciting. We're the biggest Christian university in the world right now. And I had a friend of yours the other day tell me, you guys are like the Model T just getting started in year one. You have no idea the global platform and reach you will have on behalf of Christ. And in China, for example, the estimates are they'll have about 300 million Christians in China in 30 years. So the world is just cracking wide open. And when that happens, China will reform, right? So there's great hope out there. Right now, everyone's pretty depressed with COVID and the business, and it's tough times, anxiety's through the roof. But there's always hope out there. God's at work in the world, even though we don't see it clearly. It's coming.
You go beyond. I mean, these are not it may have started as a Bible school. These are not just Bible lessons. I mean, I've been on your campus. It's fabulous, it's beautiful. You've got a trading floor, basically.
Right.
Tell us about the business school.
Yeah, no, we got 3 centers, the New York finance room, trading, students invest in the market for real. And then we got a cyber center, right? Cyber IT, information systems. That's going to be the new hub, right? It used to be accounting was kind of the platform, or economics was a platform for business. Now it's information, right? Like we're talking about with China. So going forward, everything's going to be the world of information. It's the new platform. All the kids are into this stuff, right? Doing graphic design and web design and getting out there on all their, TikToks and whatever. That's going to change. But and then the third center we have is the Entrepreneurship Center. And the Falwells have always been entrepreneurial that way, but it spreads beyond business. We're training pastors are going to run a business, and we need to equip them to do that. The doctors and nurses in the schools are going to run businesses. The music people are going to run businesses. They're going to sell albums. And so we have to bring Christian principles to bear on all of that, all we do. And of course, a lot of that happens just by building up the character of a Christian through life, even at a young age. But that's what we do every day, and we're very proud of it. And we're going to reap some great rewards.
Because he hit the nail on the head at the very beginning. Everything he's saying is exactly what it means to be a champion for Christ. It's in every sphere of influence. So what he's talking about is the competitive nature of Liberty University and how seriously academics are taken to prepare and equip them to be leaders.
All right, so we're going to have to take another break. But when we come back, I want to talk about what Liberty University and the Economic War Room are doing together to make it practical for people to express their faith in their investing as well as their giving and spending. Right. So what you're doing with your center, what you're doing at the business school, and what we're doing on educating people, I think can make a real difference. So we'll cover all that when we come back from the break.
Right.
We're speaking with former Congressman Dave Brat and Ryan Helfenbein, and we have an action plan that involves you. Luke chapter 16, verse 11 says that if you can't be faithful with unrighteous mammon, who's ever going to trust you with true riches? Usually, preachers will take that and say, oh, you got to give money to the church. But there's so much more to money than just the giving. Giving's important. So you can give your money, you can spend your money, and you can invest your money. And so we're going to talk with these two gentlemen about the advisor training program that we're starting. You were telling me a little about Luke chapter 16.
That's right.
Expound on that for us.
Yeah, so one of my favorite economic passages, and by the way, there's tons of them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where Jesus uses these parables to instill a teaching. And in Luke chapter 16, and by the way, later you have the prodigal son in the same chapter, but he talks about the dishonest manager. And Jesus actually praises him in his shrewdness and how he handles worldly wealth. He's actually commended for his ability to scheme, which is very interesting. But I think a lot of times what is missed on Christians is this We have a sacred versus secular dichotomy,
Right.
where the only function of income, or a job even for that matter, is utilitarian, that it's just, I'm going to earn money, and then I convert that money into a gift that is a tithe, and then God can use it. That's not the case. God can use all of your money, even as it's used in business and in economics, in order to build his kingdom on earth. Jason and David Benham, I was just talking to them about entrepreneurship. This is the same way. It's the Christian vision shaped largely by the Bible. More specific than a Judeo-Christian worldview, it's a biblical worldview in which we take these principles and we think then, how do we do business? How do we do economics? How do we do investing and trade and all of those things in order to build God's kingdom on this earth?
And that's why it's so important what we did at the China Summit that you held, because you mentioned worldview, and it really does require a worldview. People think, okay, well, I'm going to give properly, and I'm not going to spend money on things that are bad, but their investments might be going to fund communist China and repressing the Uyghur population, or doing organ harvesting, or forced abortion, or all of that, because they've invested in a company that just gets stuffed in their portfolio by Wall Street.
Right. And that takes thinking and sophistication and out of the Judeo-Christian tradition, right? So the New Testament's written. But then we had Magna Carta and the Renaissance and the Reformation and the Westphalia, the nation state emerges, and then our founders emerge. We found Harvard, the Protestants found Yale, Princeton, etc. And so there's a sophisticated system. Adam Smith comes along, sets up free markets. And that's the work of God. And there's not enough attention paid to that providential hand of God that's prepared us to live now in this very sophisticated system that we've built up and that is now under attack. And so I think that's what the economic war room does, is it's saying, hey, we are under attack now. All the foundational pieces that were laid from the church fathers and the creeds all the way through sophisticated modern university systems are under attack. The thrift savings plan, you called attention to that way back when.
Where we were forcing people to invest in China.
Unbelievable.
And we stopped it. The president stopped it, which was great. But capitalism, free market capitalism has brought so many people out of poverty. It's done more for really helping the poor than anything else. The idea that we socialize socialism and we take your money away to give it to the poor, that doesn't help poor people. Free market capitalism helps poor people.
And that's been totally abused, right? So in the last 20 years, the Chinese opened up economically, not politically.
Right.
And the Indians opened up economically and politically. So you got 2.5 billion people made in the image of God out of poverty because they followed the U.S. cookbook on free markets and pro-business. Now, unfortunately, they didn't follow the rule of law, the Judeo-Christian tradition in China that prizes the identity of every human made in the image of God.
Right.
And to put into that
the
person's
Chinese
rights
particularly
labor.
did it for the state.
Oh, they just
and for the
capitalism.
Well, we think it's a global. The Chinese Communist Party is a global transnational criminal organization.
Right.
They did it for the benefit of about 100 families, but they were highly successful.
Oh, they followed our cookbook, which is the success formula.
But we're taking our cookbook and we're going the wrong direction, unfortunately. Here in the United States, the people, the masters of the universe on Wall Street, they are now cramming into people's portfolios not only China, but also ESG, environmental, social justice, governance, which is radical left-wing cultural Marxism type ideas, and they're using it to fund Black Lives Matter, not the idea is important. All lives matter, Black lives matter, absolutely true biblically. But they're doing it to fund a movement that was founded by Marxists.
Yes. Ford Foundation and the like. But it's exactly right. And by the way, it should be telling to most Christians that if BLM Inc. scrubs on their website any relationship with Marxism and with their destruction of what they called the patriarchy and all that, they scrubbed their website just recently because it's unpopular. Now that attention has been called to it, we know the game, and so they are trying to distance themselves from what the early expressions that came out around the George Floyd case.
And so all of this makes me want to get back because the Judeo-Christian tradition, without it, we're dead.
Right.
But Christians have been naive, especially naive in innocence when it comes to evil in our face. And so you've got, Blackstone, Larry Fink, the head of it, and he's doing ESG, right?
BlackRock, yeah.
In BlackRock, the environmental, social, liberal social governance, environment, all this stuff. And then one of our friends says to him at a public board meeting, at their own board meeting, hey, you're doing all this stuff, but why is half your money going to China? They're not particularly known for their clean skies and good liberal governance and taking care of the people and human rights. And it was crickets. And so then we say, conservatives say, in our naivete, they've contradicted themselves. We got them. Whoop-de-doo. They're taking real estate. Yeah. They're going around the world getting nation states on the UN votes, and we're writing white papers at think tanks saying you've contradicted yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
No, they've got a plan and they know what they're doing. And here's the problem.
We have no plan.
It's not just the Chinese Communist Party. We also talk a lot about George Soros. Right. The name that shall not be named on Fox News is George Soros.
Right. Yeah.
So George Soros is a wealthy guy, and he's had an unbelievable negative impact on our nation. What would $1 trillion, if it was weaponized for Judeo-Christian values, do? That's 400 times the wealth of George Soros. And that's what we're talking about when we train advisors. Our goal is to get $1 trillion of American patriotic citizens' capital that is to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution rather than to attack it. We want to leave a legacy for future generations. So thank you, gentlemen, for giving us the opportunity to partner with you. I mean, you've got 100,000 students, and we've got the best online training. We're going to be training advisors, because the average person says, I don't know what to do with how do I weaponize my money? Well, you need help. And the Bible talks about, with many counselors, plans succeed. So we're going to help people get some counselors through the training program. So if people have an advisor, they need to go to economicwarroom.com/advisor and nominate their advisor to be a part of the Liberty University Economic War Room training program. We need capital for entrepreneurs, we need money for America, and we've got to fund innovation in this world, really.
Thanks for building that curriculum.
It's awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
We appreciate it. Look, in Dunkirk, the small ships made a difference. You as an audience, you're powerful. Christians can make a difference if they'll be faithful and unrighteous mammon. It's expected of us. It's required of us. Look, George Soros has been highly successful with a fraction of what we can do together. So thank you, Dave, and thank you, Ryan, for your leadership, for training the best and brightest of America and partnering with us in the Economic War Room. It's great having you there. To learn more about this, go to economicwarroom.com and download our free battle plan. If you want to be found faithful with your money, we can help. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.